I'm in Denver, Colorado.
Oh, nice. My brother's visiting from Denver.
Where are you?
Boston, outside of Boston.
Boston and Denver. We
Yeah.
have Robert Glazer on the line, Amber Vilhauer, your host. We are live right now for the NGNG community, which, Robert, to give you some context, is packed full of authors, speakers, coaches, thought leaders, influencers, people really trying to make a difference in the world. For all of you listening, I'm really excited about this discussion that we're about to have. I was recently introduced to Robert, which is bananas
Yeah.
because we know so many people.
We,
We have
we,
like
we, didn't, we didn't put together the dots on LinkedIn, clearly.
totally. I looked on Facebook. We have dozens and dozens and dozens of mutual friends, but it was Darius Mershazadeh who introduced us. So you guys might remember the Pink book and the pink unicorn branding that was all over the internet a couple of weeks ago. Darius recommended me to Robert, who is currently launching Elevate, which I don't know if you know this, Robert, but this word means a lot to me. I'm actually in the middle of writing a book called Elevate Every Experience, and it's all about how to develop personal connection to scale your influence. So, anyway, Darius recommends me to Robert. I'm like, clearly, I got to know who this guy is. And he was nice enough to come online to meet you all and talk about his amazing new book. So, Robert, how's it going with the launch?
It's going. So actually, yeah, the Elevate launched 1 year ago today, and then Friday Forward launched last month. They are cousins. They're brother and sister. But yeah, that's the new one. It both feels pretty recent. So yeah, the launch is it's going well. I mean, we were just talking offline. It's a very interesting time to launch a book in the world.
Yes.
But I actually think that the messages are needed more than ever, even if the media doesn't want to hear them because they like all the sensational stuff. But there's a lot of people struggling right now and trying to figure out where they're going and what they're going to do. And I actually think a lot of these principles are more important than ever.
Is there a week in the 52 weeks of inspirational stories? Is there one that's your favorite or that you like to highlight?
Yeah, I got asked that more now. I should have anticipated that question. It's like picking your children. Um, I say that, like, I think there's a theme that covers a couple of them. The Ed Sheeran story I really like, in terms of, like, I like demystifying the myth of the overnight success. And so what I love about the Ed Sheeran story is here is a guy, singer, song, like, just unbelievable raw talent, right? Just oozing with talent. And he couldn't make it for like 5 years. You know, he was playing 500 shows. He basically made himself homeless. I don't know how many people know the story, but he left his house at like 14 or 15, started playing in London. He would sleep on the subways to the next show. He sold CDs out of his bag. Like, no one would pick it up. Finally, with $500, he got a one-way ticket to LA, knew no one. Someone saw him at a club, related Jamie Foxx, invited him back to his house. Jamie Foxx, I heard him tell the story, threw him up on a stage in
I
a
did not know that.
total room of people that were not Ed Sheeran's fans. He pulled out a ukulele at this like R&B place, and he's like, oh my God, this is gonna be a disaster. And he got a standing ovation in like 5 minutes. So Jamie brought him back to his house to record. So the moral of the story there is, like, it is not talent that wins, right? I mean, I think we like to, just his raw determination from the time he was 13 that this is what he was going to do. And there's a quote at the end that his dad said, don't have a plan B because then your plan A has to work. So I just love, I love his music, and I like the story too.
Wow. So what inspired you to move forward with Friday Forward? When was the moment?
So Friday Forward, the newsletter, started because I started writing this note to my team on Fridays, coming out of a leadership retreat that I went to that talked about sort of writing something in the morning that is kind of reading something positive, writing. And we were given a couple of books, and I liked the notion of reading something positive in the morning. What we were given was a little too rainbow and unicorny for me. So a few weeks later, I thought I'd try to connect to my team of 30 or 40 people at the time, and I'd start writing this note. And I started just sending it for a month or two, and it was about getting better, improvement. It wasn't about our business in any way. And eventually it just started to go outside the company. Someone wrote a note saying, this is the only thing I read each week. I made it so people could sign up. And a couple of years later, there was 100,000 people signed up for this Note Friday Forward. So I thought it'd be a great idea to write a book. Went to and talked to a bunch of agents. It was going to be a compilation. Went to all of them. And they all said, yeah, no, like publishers don't like compilations. One of them said to me the same thing. He said, look, I love these stories. I love the writing. Publishers don't buy compilations. So like, what's the story behind these stories? And that actually led me. So I shelved that book and I went and really thought about what were the key things coming out of this? Why were people around the world reading this, changing their life? What were we doing in our business? What was I doing? What were all these super high successful people doing? And that actually led to Elevate and me to sort of kind of figure out this framework of capacity building.
Gotcha. Okay.
Launched Elevate, made USA Today, Wall Street Journal, great. And then I went back to publisher and I said, I still want to launch that book. And now I had a much bigger platform, and several 100,000 people. So I said, look, I want to tie these stories now to the framework, to the capacity building framework, because I think there's the theory of capacity building, and then there's these are the stories of how you do it. And so I basically dusted that book off and sort of rewrote it. And I always knew I wanted to get it out there. And it was just, sometimes it's a matter of timing.
Yes, it is sometimes a matter of time. So I was on your website, wanted to show people Elevate. And then I want to show people Friday Forward. I love that cover. I think did you go through Scribe? Is that what
I worked with Scribe on my first book, Performance Partnerships, and originally on Friday Forward. But yeah, I worked with Source Books on this.
That's right, Source Books. Yeah. Sorry, Robert. Love that book. I'm a book cover snob.
Yeah, they have very good design. So I love all their design stuff.
So how has this launch compared to past launches, just out of curiosity?
It was sort of as expected. I think, look, the launch date was decided a year ago. We actually never talked about delaying it. I as an entrepreneur, I always believe in doing sort of the hard thing. I'm like, look, the world needs these stories right now. And I'm hearing from a lot of people, but obviously trying to land the plane in between the pandemic and the election. I think most people have said, the traditional media is just not super available. I think the things that aren't on the top of on the news every day. So, I just went to the 80-20 from last time. I think it was about, what were the things that worked? Who were the people that mattered? And we kind of went back on that playbook. But that's the biggest thing I heard from people is that, it got better, but I mean, this, but so March, April, most podcasts were way down because people didn't have this commute time or free time, or they're trapped and all this stuff. So you've got like the media not super available, like the television media when we talked about. You got podcasts, which were people's main thing, kind of can't go talk about something totally unrelated in the middle of COVID. I have a podcast. I had to hold off half the episodes I recorded, and most people did. You record 6 weeks ahead, and you can't. If I talk to someone about the cool thing about your dream job, you can't run that on April 1st. So it was a little upside down. So yeah, it was different. But I think like everything, you pivot and you go for it. And I'm playing the long game with the platform and the book and all that stuff.
I love the concept of Friday Forward. It was years ago when one of the things that really was a game changer for me, unrelated, well, sort of related, was at the end of the day, I would then turn over a page in my journal and I would write out my to-dos for the next day, right? And ending the day that way was a game changer because I got to offload all of that chaos stirring up in my mind and then just leave it then on my desk. And then I could go out and I could have time with family, and it was more sacred. I was more present. I was not thinking like, oh yeah, I need to remember that other thing. Yeah. So when I got the book, I really loved that it is how, really focused on what happens launching into the week ahead. So it started with a Friday email that you were sending to your team, which is really super smart. I want to dig in a little bit to, got a comment here from Calvin that I thought I would put in. Yeah. I want to talk about culture around your organization for a second, if that's okay. What are some things that you can tell to this community of entrepreneurs and business owners? What are some things that are most meaningful in your culture that you have rolled out that has been the biggest game changer for you, that you've really observed more commitment or more positivity or more productivity?
Well, it actually goes to the whole, I knew we were doing it, but before I sat down to write Elevate, I didn't have the verbiage. So I think there are two things. similar to the framework, like we have a clear values and vision. Like we have clear core values that are real. It's how people behave. And we want to find people that are aligned to that. They're not like values like integrity and stuff that are, just thrown up on a wall. I mean, our core values are own it, embrace relationships, and excel and improve. And you'd hear or see them every day. And again, I don't need a chart or manual to recite those. Nor does anyone else. But we used to say, before I had the capacity building name and framework around spiritual, intellectual, physical, emotional, we used to say, like, we trained people holistically. We believed in a growing company that if we just invested in people overall and helped them increase their capacity, that we would do better as a company and they would do better outside the business. So we worked on things like time management and health and stress and help people figure out their core values and all these things that weren't necessarily, about making them better robots for the business. So I think that's the biggest thing, is like I believe in, you just invest in people and you grow people and your business will grow. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't have people that don't work out, that you don't have accountability. I mean, it's not perfect in every situation, but the first time we started doing this with our leaders on the core values, they're like, wait, you want to spend a half day helping us figure out our personal core values? Like, why? I'm like, I don't think you can be a good leader unless you know them. And you're gonna have some revelations about why you do what you do in your relationship with your parents or your spouse or otherwise. Once you figure this out, and your team, and everyone's going to be better. Like, we're going to get the better leadership side of you for that, but everything's going to be better for that. And I think, hopefully that reflects on your experience here, even if you're not going to be here forever, and you reflect positively upon that.
So what's the future looking like for your organization? Like, where are you guys you're all rowing in the same direction, but where are you rowing to? What's it look like? What do you want to do?
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to build the first kind of $100 million company in our industry. We have a big, hairy, audacious goal. We're trying to change both the marketing industry in terms of having people pay for things that work, and then also how people work. And that, we were actually remote before this whole thing started, and it wasn't about remote per se. It was about flexibility. Like, the work hard, play hard sounds like trite, but I think of it more as sort of work-life integration, which is like, we want people to do awesome things outside of work and inside of work. And I actually think that leads to a better whole.
Awesome. Now, you said the trigger word. Before we went live, you were talking about remote working, and I want to give us an opening here to talk a little bit more about that, because people have been asking you how you do it. How are you successful with it, right? Yeah. What do we need to know about this world?
Well, a couple of things. One, we were very intentional. Like, it took us a decade to figure out, but to keep perfecting it on who's the right person that succeeds in this environment. So it's not for everyone. And I think a lot of companies are going to have this decision to make when they're going to have two problems potentially, right? They were in person and it's time to come back to the office and no one wants to come, right? I mean, that's one problem. Right. And they got to decide that. Or it can be the reverse, right? People are dying to get back to the office, but they decide that, this is a better strategy for them. So I actually think the companies are going to have to make the decision of what they want holistically. Ideally, you would talk to your people and then realize that is not going to be what some people want. And that's okay. I think you need to put a stake in the ground, and that's going to mean some turnover in some way, but it's better not to pretend that you're trying to make everyone happy than you're picking a direction. So we think it's finding the right people that align to those values that are really tied to it. We work a lot on boundaries. How do you set up the boundaries at home? How do you kind of create the space that you need? I think there was a big misnomer that people working from home, that the personal life would spill into their work. I think it's actually the opposite. I think work spills into personal. So just how do you set up your space?
Yeah.
What? Yeah.
I completely agree with that.
People take their laptop, as I said to someone, I talk about the virtual commute. Like, I think you need to not touch work for the first hour when you make your cut. Like, you need to do that. And then you need to do that at the end of the day. Because my new analogy for people is like, look, if you grab your iPhone next to your bed and wake up and jump into work email, it is like someone ripped you in your pajamas and threw you into the office. Like, that is the actual equivalent. Like, you're not mentally, physically ready. And if you're not in medicine, no one died overnight, like, but nothing terrible happened. But once you look at it, look, you and I, where people take pride in our work, right? Once you look at the angry email from the client, like, then you're all sucked in, right? So if you've done that before you've gone on your run, had your coffee, planned out your thing for the day, then you are going to be in a very defensive mode. So a lot about sort of setting how you set boundaries, and then the technology and the tools and support and cadence that you need to make it work. The other caveat I will say, whether you've decided you weren't working remote before and you're working remote now, and you either love it or hate it, this is not, if you love it, you're really going to love it. This is not a normal environment for remote work. One of the biggest benefits for a lot of our people from remote work was, they had kids and they wanted some flexibility. Now those kids are homeschooling in their house, which is not ideal. Or they loved that they could go out bike riding and training for their, event with a bunch of friends at lunch and do that, or they could have the socialization. So they're missing all of those other outlets that they could do. So this is ironically the worst environment for remote work. So whether you say you like it or hate it, I would keep that in mind, because normally your spouse and kids aren't, also at home while you're working, if you have that partner situation. And you have these other outlets that actually make the flexibility really important. Most of those have been taken, off the table for people.
What a great point. I hadn't heard anybody bring it up that way before. So well done. Something that I am very mindful of right now is how I talk to probably, 10, 12 people a day, Robert. Like, that's my unique ability. I love doing it. Love
Zoom fatigue.
Embracing relationships. Yeah, I totally had to develop the strength to be able to do that with Zoom. But what I've been seeing the past couple of weeks is mental health is much more prevalent now than ever before, even compared to April, back when COVID first hit. It's excuse me, there's this fatigue that's set in. And now when you combine that with what's happening with the debates and the election, people are fried. And what you said about boundaries, developing a structure and a routine around working from home and integrating self-care everywhere that you can, I think is extremely important right now. Back when I first started working from home, this was 2006, people thought I was crazy. How on earth can you do that? And I said, well, I don't, I'm extremely structured. I show up at work every day at the same time. I get dressed for work. I'm not in pajamas. The whole COVID year thing, this was it.
The deodorant sales are down 30%, since it started. It's like milk was up 30%, deodorant was down 30%. Yeah.
But yeah, so going to work at a time, ending work at a time, I wasn't mixing, friend lunches and stuff like that. I took it very seriously. But then when I wasn't working, I was off, and to your point, it's not like you're in the medical industry. So you should have those boundaries in place, which is really good. What are you observing, or what are you telling people right now about how to mentally make it through? Because it's not like next month it's going to be over. And
I have so many thoughts on this. So look, I am in a bunch of peer groups with other mastermind groups with other CEO and executives. Everyone on my team is in different groups. The culture is, with other culture people, and CFO or agency, it's a big thing we have on sort of learning. Everyone is coming back from what?
That's really cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's we like peer learning, and every discussion is just about how much of a struggle the mental health aspect is right now. And the way I describe it is, I think I normally work is about work. If people are stressed, we could look at something oh, well, we got to spread out the monthly reports because it's overdoing it. But I think if people's normal stress, thing kicks in at 75, it's kicking in at 40 today for everyone. And it's kicking in not for anything that's going on in the work environment, but as you said, what's going on outside of it. And so I just think you need to be aware of that, and you need to have those discussions and understand that, try to separate out the what are things that you can actually fix versus where are these thresholds just lower, and you need to understand it. In the past, when we had a problem and it stressed everyone out, it would really be a problem. It may not be a problem right now. It may be that the problem is that they're just exhausted, right? And their kids are at school and so they're just coming to work. So we're trying to have as many open discussions. We're checking in with people. We're talking about self-care. We're giving them tools. We're setting up peer resources. We're trying to have as much discussion as we can. I really believe in this thing. I wrote a Friday forward on it. It's been one of those popular ones called the Stockdale Paradox. And it came from Jim Collins' Good to Great. And it was about this Admiral James Stockdale who survived, 8 years in this prisoner of war camp. And it was a metaphor for what Jim Collins studied, a principle of all these really great enduring companies over the long term had this philosophy. And it was, they always talked about, and this was Admiral Stockdale, he always said, I'm going to get out and it's going to be the defining moment of my life. But he was not he actually found out all the people that didn't make it out were, what he said, he was interviewing with Collins. He said, well, who didn't make it out? And he said, the optimist. And he's like, well, I don't get it. I thought you were optimistic. He said, no, they always thought they were going to be out by Christmas or Thanksgiving or always tomorrow. Mm-hmm. They didn't accept the brutal reality. And so they kind of died of a broken heart. And Viktor Frankl wrote about this in Man's Search for Meaning, that like they sort of died of a broken heart. So what we've adopted and we have adopting is like, it's going to be okay in the end. We're going to, but like, we're not avoiding the realities. Like I've been telling you, it's going to be a long winter. This is going to be tough. Here's what we're going to do. Like I think all along we've told people the truth. We've explained what was going on. I think early on we were actually pretty direct with everyone as things were falling apart really quickly in the world. And we heard some feedback that was like, why are you torturing us with all this data or telling us? And we're like, we want to be honest about what's going on. And then a couple of weeks later, their partner who worked in another company got laid off with no notice. And then people came back and said, actually, I really appreciate you sort of like communicating all the way. Like all these other people were just kept in the dark and then got blindsided. So that's the approach we've tried to take. We are, there's a lot of not good news to share. I'm not going to tell anyone that the next 4 months are going to be easy, but we're focused on, it's going to end the long term. Here's what we're doing. But I told our team this week, I think it's going to be a really long winter. I can't give anyone a magic pill to make that go away, right? But I can focus on the future and what it's going to look like and how we can help each other. But I'm not. It's going to be a long 4 or 5 months. It just really is.
I so appreciate this. I like you so much, Robert, because when COVID first hit, I called an immediate, like an emergency team meeting. And I said, this is what's going on. This is real. This is
bad stuff. This is historic. Yeah.
This is the bad stuff that's about to happen. And what I really focused on, because our top core value is meaningful connection. And so I said,
embrace relationships. Yeah,
I do. I totally do. But I said, I want you all to remember that people are going to be stressed. They're going to be exhausted. They're going to be scared. They're going to be stunned. Like they're not going to be thinking as clearly and they're not going to be as optimistic. They're not going to know what to do. But I will say this, that in a moment when somebody is like that, you need to over communicate in a gentle and loving way with them, because what might happen is they might out of nowhere think, I don't know where I am in the process of my website launching. And they might get upset about that if they don't know, if they can't recall the detail of that. So instead, it's best to just check in with clients once or twice a week saying, hi, I hope you're doing okay. Just wanted to let you know we made this progress. This is what's next. We made this progress. Here's what's next. And just guiding them through the customer journey, making sure that they feel like we are really here. We are dedicated now more than ever before. We see them. We value them. Little things. And by openly addressing that with the team, preparing them for how customers might be behaving, and then arming them with information so that they feel like they have tools and resources to rely upon to really excel at their job during that time. We did great during that entire experience. And now this week, sort of like you, had a meeting and I said, guys, people are really hurting right now, a little off up here. So here's what we're going to do moving forward. The other thing that came up for me when you were saying all of that, Robert, is I believe that there is opportunity in everything, right? Like a lot of people are looking ahead right now and they're thinking it's doom and gloom and it's all hard and it's scary. And I'm thinking like, where's the opportunity? Right now, I think there's an opportunity to really ask your customers questions and be here for them and really listen to what they're saying to you and provide new solutions. There's always an opportunity everywhere you go.
Yeah, and there's a human layer on it too, right? One of the things that we have as a customer service thing is to ask, like, jump on the phone with it. Hey, Amber, how's it going? Because you might be like, you know what, it's not going well today. And so one thing I shared with my team, recently was I was looking at stats saying 30% of people are severely depressed right now. Like 10% of people have contemplated suicide, right? Think of yourself like when you're on the phone talking to someone, asking them how they are, like think of yourself like beyond the work, like you are in a position to connect with them, help them. Like they may be stressed out and yelling, but you may actually be helping them on a deeper level than by saying, hey, Amber, like, how's it going? Yeah.
Yes. Every time, like you have to do stuff like that. I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm very passionate about this, obviously. And what I was going to say is, when you were talking, I just felt this huge passion that I want to share with viewers right now, that I think one of the best things that you can do for your team, I don't care if you're contracting with a VA in California and a web designer from here and there a little while, what I encourage you to do is to get through this upcoming season is get a copy of the book for you and then buy one for your contractors, buy one for your employee, buy one for your freelancers. Schedule a weekly call every Friday for 30 minutes even, and go through the book week by week and have an open discussion together and really use this as a way to come together, to unite each other, to have really great conversation, and to get their ideas that they can then bring back into your organization so that you don't feel so alone either. I don't know if that's what everybody is doing with your book, Robert, but that's what I think.
Well, we didn't talk about this. The book is 5-minute stories, right? So you can sit down. You don't read it cover from cover. You don't need to. It's not connected. I had a guy reach out to me this morning and said, I've been carrying around with me. Like there's a lot of bad stuff. I read 1 or 2 a day. And he's like, it always sort of lifts me. I was joking with someone, like you can actually use it for mini book clubs. Like you could just take one of the stories and discuss it. Right. And what's the thing about book club? Everyone always stresses about, reading the book in advance and the night before. Like anyone can read the 5-minute story, before the mini book club. That's not a big ask.
No, it's not. And what I also appreciate, there's like a lot of very tactical information in here as well. So you guys could like read it, discuss it, and then co-create a few action steps that you're going to, put into the next week ahead. So really,
and I'll throw out there if anyone's listening, because I've done this for people. I've had people want to buy it for clients. They reached out. I actually personalized all of them so they could send them to their clients. So, it was a nice touch for them.
And I think we should do both. Because I felt so bad in the beginning. I thought you were launching both at the same time, but I think
I can understand why you're confused, because they were not that far apart. No. Most people don't launch 2 books in 11 months.
But it's great, right? Okay, so guys, I really would appreciate if you do us a favor and add a comment below and let us know what you found most helpful, because my heart goes out to Robert. He is like on the speaking tour. He's talking to everybody that he can about these books, and he's got to be exhausted. I know what it's like for authors at this stage of the game. So let's give him a little bit of love. Let's give him a little bit of validation. Go buy bulk copies of the book, and let's help get this message out, because the world needs Robert. And the world needs you in order to help fulfill that vision and goal. Robert, thank you so much for just your trust and your support and your friendship and coming on and sharing your wisdom with our community.
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
All right, bye. We'll see you later.
Take care.